Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to part 3 of our Marine Engine Rebuilding Tips and Info webinar series. My name is Amanda Goyette. I am an admin assistant with AERA, and I will be in the background moderating today's event with my colleague, Rob Monroe.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, Rob Monroe here. I look after membership and technical development at AERA. And like Amanda mentioned, we're going to be in the background today to answer any questions you've got. You're in for a real treat today. Chris has been gathering this marine information for over 30 years. And this is part 3 of a series that we've done for marine webinars.
Now, this is a sheet. We talked about other top RPMs. This is Crusader. All right. This is, I believe, from the 2007 model year, just something I had in my archives. And obviously, here's all the different engines and different horsepower levels. And look, they tell us what our cruising RPM is. Okay. And then they tell us what our max is. You know, a 5-liter, 446 to 5,000. You know, obviously, an 8.1 HO is 48 to 5,200. You know. So, and they want you to cruise this thing at 4,000. Like, to most people, that seems like a lot, but if the boat's propped correctly, that's where this thing's going to live. That's where it's going to live. Okay. And you can see this is where you kind of get some information. Okay. And again, if you run into a jam and you need some information, please reach out to me. Email me. I will be more than happy to try to get you the information, because stuff like this is sometimes very hard to come by. And to me, this is absolutely gold. You know, I got to know what these engines are supposed to run. Okay. And again, 9 out of 10 engines, there's going to be a sticker on the engine. But you know, if it's been in salt water and it's been sandblasted and repainted and rebuilt and re-long blocked or whatever, who knows where that sticker went. Okay. But this is important, you know, and your marina, if you're dealing with a marine service facility, they should be a good resource too. So here I am on this sea trowel. Okay. This happens to be an 8.1 that we redid over the last winter. And, you know, we're just kind of cruising here about 3,800 RPM, right? We got a little over 40 pounds oil pressure and we're about 140 on the temp. You know, I'm making sure all that stuff works before we go anywhere. I do want to make a comment about some certain gauges. All right. Now, one nice thing that Volvo Penta has done, and I believe Mercury Marine does this too. I can't confirm that. But with the E-Controls controller, EGC and Crusader, if the master slave cable is hooked up, all right, which is basically a cable that connects both engines together via a J1939 CAN bus. Believe it or not, it'll average the water and oil pressure gauges. For years, it's always been a thorn in our side in this industry, especially marine, right? You might rebuild 2 engines and maybe one engine's got 40 pounds at idle and the other one's got 30. Now, most of us engine builders know that there's not a problem with that. But if a customer writes a check for 20 grand, okay, he gets on the phone and says, hey man, one of these engines got 10 less pounds of oil pressure. And you know as well as I do, a lot of people judge longevity by the oil pressure gauge, right? They think a motor that's got 70 pounds of oil pressure, oh, this thing's ready to go. It's ready to tear it up, you know? And they think something that's got 10 at idle is the biggest piece of junk. Okay, that's what they think, especially on the internet. Okay, but I want you to be aware of something here. Okay, and I'm not going to read all this to you, but basically that they average them together. So in other words, you know, both gauges are going to read completely identical in temperature and in oil pressure. If it gets outside of a calibrated number, they will display actual. So if I really do lose oil pressure in one engine, you know, it's not going to sit there and lie to me and tell me that I've still got 45. It will go to actual both engines. But this is handy. I wish this is something we had years ago, because there's nothing worse than a customer saying, one engine's running 175, the other one's 165. You know, it's annoying. It's annoying. But I want you to know this is out there, all right? Because you might sea trawl a vessel with something like this, and you're going to think, I did this, did the best job in the world. These things are identical, both engines. Well, maybe it did, but maybe it could be the computer too. So just want you to be aware of this. Okay, and here's me sea trowling this boat back this spring. I got my hand on the riser here. This happens to be an 8.1, obviously, and this riser should be cold all the time. This is what I meant by a cold riser. Okay, this is a spring. I got my coat on. You know, these guys are fishermen out here. They're hardcore. I mean, we sea trawl this boat in March, and water's still cold over here, pretty good. But this is something we're doing. We're looking around. We're checking everything. You know, I always put my hand on here. I want to make sure that thing's cold. I'm going to touch on this. This is late model Merc Cruiser. This happens to be out of a 4.5 liter. This is Mercury's own V6. We talked about this a couple times ago, but there's two ways to prop this boat. The best way is using the scan tool. Okay, there's a thing called demand linear and throttle position and so forth. And this boat here happens to be over propped because it can only achieve 4,500. They're asking for 48 to 52. And you can see that the demand is a little bit low. Okay, and this is a propping issue. Okay, so again, this is where your marine dealer should be able to help you. I'm not expecting every engine builder to be an ace on propping boats and have all this. For instance, this tool here, G3, you can do this on Diacom, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. This tool G3 here is only available to Mercury dealers. You cannot get this tool. Okay, so I don't care how much money you got, unless you got a homeboy hookup buddy at the dealer, you're not getting it. Okay, so but that's what this screenshot is from their factory scanner. All right, and this is basically the same thing. Okay, you can read this on your own time, but this is basically, they got the boat propped right. You see how everybody's 100% here. Okay, that's how they can tell they've got the boat propped correctly. All right, this is how you can do it without the scan tool. Okay, and like I said, it's always best to prop at the top end of the spec. Circle that, underline it, whatever. And these are some newer engines, and obviously you can see different horsepower levels have different prop ratings, right? So if my 250 horse 4.5 is only turning 44, that's no bueno. Okay, something's up. Maybe I got it over propped. Okay, so and this procedure here is pretty decent. They want you to jump it, at 200 RPM increments and so forth. There's nothing wrong with that. Make sure it's up on plane, yada yada. So, but this is what they want you to do, and this is so important. This is why this sea trowel is important. We can do the bestest job ever. We can use the best quality parts. We can put brand new, whatever it is. If this sea trowel is not done and this thing's not propped right, it doesn't matter what I did, because if it fails, it's all over. Okay, it's all over. All right. Let's talk about high RPM, right? Maybe why can't I achieve high RPM? I could have something wrong with my engine. That's true. Missing cylinder, something like that, right? Fuel problem, ignition timing, whatever. I would say number two is the propeller condition or incorrect size. And when I say condition, right? People hit rock piles. I just showed you a boat, seems like a little while ago, right? Where customer hit a rock pile, screwed the thing up, detonated the engine, ruined everything. Okay, so propellers might look really good to you and me. All right, but I don't have that kind. I'm not Superman vision, right? So a prop scan, like an MRI is what it's called. All right, if you've got a good prop shop around your shop, those MRI things are very, very good. Or there's good guys with blocks too. Have them put it on the blocks and make sure, if it's supposed to be a 15-15 prop, make sure it's what it is. Okay, I don't care if it looks fine. Take it off, get it checked. Okay, I mean, this is not an eyeball test. This is something that needs to be checked and balanced and everything else. Okay, so one of the questions is, well, how do I know, what is the correct prop? Okay, obviously, if you've got some factory info, would be good, right? If you know if it's a 21 Sea Ray, there's some guidelines, and I'll show you where to get some of that stuff. Okay, one of the best spots is a reputable prop shop. Most prop shops have a really knowledgeable guy. We're really lucky in our town. We've got some knowledgeable prop guys that I rely on. Okay, because if we got an issue with an engine we did and we think there's an issue, all right, with the prop, I'm on the phone with these guys. Hey, what do you think? This is what I did. Blah 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 blah. Right? And they're going to want to know some things. So don't call them and say, hey, I just put this 350 Chevy in this boat, don't run right. All right. It's like, don't you hate it when customers call you and ask questions like that, right? You got to know some things, all right? So you want to know what the outdrive or transmission ratio is, right? And you want to know the current prop size. Don't waste your time until you've got those information, because it's going to be very hard sometimes, unless you've got a really good guy that really knows what that boat came with. But, do a little homework first. And that's why when the boat's out of the water, one thing I like to do is I'll ask the customer, hey, what prop is on here? And before the boat goes back in the drink, write all that stuff down. Most of these props are marked. Write them down, see what it looks like. Okay. The other thing you probably never realize is weight. Okay. if a boat is overweight, that is another issue, right? A lot of these boats we're working on, at least up here in the freshwater, the 1980s, 70s, these things are waterlogged. Guys are blowing up engines left and right because the boat's too heavy, right? I mean, I wish I had a video. A friend of mine, about a month ago, a transducer rod out of a fishing boat hull, sport craft, and they took the transducer out, and water was pouring out of where the transducer went through, and there was no water in the bilge. It was inside, trapped in the hull. I mean, just pouring out. Now, how do you think that engine? You think that engine's gonna last in that boat? The boat's rotten. It's rotten. Okay. So, but if we weighed that thing, I'm sure it'd be way overweight. So the question is, what's the boat supposed to weigh? Well, that's where you kind of need help again, right? If you got a factory brochure, you got a knowledgeable current dealer. If you're working on a Regal or a Grady White or something like that, most times, a marine or somebody knows somebody that works there, or you can call the sales guy. They can pull this information up and say, hey, that boat's supposed to weigh 12,500 pounds or whatever. And last but not least, we got Google. Okay, we use GARP, Google Auto Repair, right? Well, I don't have an acronym for marine, but believe it or not, C-Ray, which we're going to get to in a second, actually publishes all this information. All right, I'm picking on C-Ray because there's a lot of C-Rays out there, right? But one of the things you can do is you can go to the C-Ray website, and then I'll show you where to go there in a second. And this 38 Sundancer 2001 is supposed to have a dry weight of 18,300 pounds. Okay, these are kind of nice boats. I actually kind of like these. They're big. You can get diesels in them, but most of these things had 8.1s or 7.4s depending on the year. But look at this. What do you think? 275 gallons of fuel. You know what that weighs, right? You got another 70 gallons of water. The holding tank's 42 gallons. A lot of weight. And honestly, that weight, is basically with all that included. So I mean, that's pretty heavy. All right. So dry weight, we'll call it 18,000 pounds, right? Here's another awesome document on this same site. You can go back. I just happen to pick this 2004, and they tell me, hey, Chris, 2004 200 Sundancer, right, with a 4.3, 220 horsepower. Hey, look, it tells me the ratio of the drive, right, 162. It left the factory with a 14x19 stainless steel Vengeance prop. Vengeance is a Mercury name, and they want it 5,000 RPM, right? That's what that prop should turn, all right? And here's the C-Ray part number of the prop, right? But you can go down through here. There's all kinds of stuff in here. This is handy. This is handy. If you want to know what something is, to me, this is free information. Anytime I get something for free, I'm all about it, okay? Let's bring in a problem child, right? Check out this 1997 C-Ray, right? It's a 37 aft cabin. That's the AC, right? It's got the drapes, the whole smash in here, okay? Generator, and it's got the 7.4 310 horse engines in it, okay? The L29s. This thing was a dog, all right? Now, we did not have to do the engines in this, but I assisted the dealer with this. And the problem is it couldn't get top RPM, and it had the props that sheet said it was supposed to have, okay? So it says it has the correct props. It was about 300 RPM from the top, right? This thing can only turn up about 3,800 RPM. This engine should turn, 41, 4,200, all right, approximately 4,000 to 4,400 specifically is what this is supposed to turn, both engines. And both engines wouldn't turn up. Of course, the customer says, I've got the prop that it left the factory with. I bought the boat brand new, yada, yada. Okay. The reason I bring this up is these marine travel lifts, if you've got a good marina that actually maintains this, okay, we all know in a marina, just like a airport, right? The worst things in an airport are the ground equipment, right? The tugs, that stuff. The airplanes are always dialed in maintenance-wise, but everything else in an airport's junk. Same thing in a marina, right? Everything's good in a marina except the travel lift and everything else. We don't maintain any of that stuff. But 9 out of 10 times, if you got a good marina, there's actually weight gauges on these, and this is an easy way to weigh this boat. Okay, I can't take this to the lumber company or our cement place on a trailer and weigh this boat. So luckily, our marina friends here, they've got these gauges. Okay, and on the rear hoist, it's pulling about 15,000 pounds there. Okay, and over here it's about 11,000. All right, so this boat weighs 26,000 as is. All right, that's heavy. Okay, what's it supposed to weigh, right? You go to cray.com and you click owners. There's an owners tab right here. All right. And they got new boats in here too. They got parts manuals. They got all kinds of interesting stuff. You click Martel Archives. All right. And then I select right here, 1997. Okay. And I select, hey, it's 36 to 50 foot. And then guess what? Here's my sheets, right? So I click this. I click on the 370 aft cabin and it says, hey, Chris, 23,800, right? Is what this boat should have weighed. And would you say that this is 2,000, this thing's over a ton heavier? I mean, you think that's a lot, and that's with no people, right? That's no beer, that's no food, that's no fish cooler, nothing, right? So just think this gets worse with 5 more people and the dogs and everything else, okay? So right now, this thing is already overweight. So you know what has to be done? This boat needs to have prop taken out. I know what the gospel said. The gospel said it was supposed to have a 22 by 22 or whatever. But you know what? We had to take a couple pitches out of that. It did slow the boat down a little bit, but I told the customer it's the only way it's going to live. You know, as an engine builder, I can't account for this. Okay, I cannot account for this. You know, I mean, if you want stuff to live, this is what this is what you got to do. I just want to show you other things other than an engine that can affect top RPM and could cause repeat failures. Because I'm sure all of you agree that that's heavy. It's heavier than what it's supposed to be. And again, I don't know the fuel level it was in. I don't know the holding tank. But like I say, a good marina, if they've got those hydraulic weight things working on their hoist, you want to know this, right? You got an issue with a boat's got repeat engine failures, get it weighed. If it's got a trailer, if it's a smaller boat, I'm sure you know the drill on that. Weigh the trailer separately without anything in it, then weigh it with the boat, do the mass, subtract it, figure it out. But I see this. I'm not going to say it's common, but it does happen. Okay, it does happen. So now you're thinking, well, the boat's junk, right? Full of water. Well, this boat belonged to a friend of mine, okay, because it flunked a survey, tried to sell it. But it's a 1998 Tierra 40 Express. I had a pair of 3208 cats in it, but there are procedures to fix this, okay? And you see over here that they actually taped this out, and they're going to cut this out, and I'm going to show you what they're going to do to this. Is they have a vacuum system in here, and they blow, excuse me, not vacuum, they blow air in here. They dry this thing out, okay? This boat's a 1998. It's actually a very nice boat, but you see there's systems, there's fiberglass technicians that can fix stuff like that. Just because this thing is all waterlogged out does not mean the boat is a complete piece of junk. Some of this stuff can get fixed, okay? See, they cut a hole in the inside here, okay? They chop that out, they'll re-glass that, and look at all these little hoses, right? They're gonna blow air in here over the winter. This is in a heated storage facility. They're gonna dry this thing out, right? The deck up here was soft, full of water, right? Real common by the anchor, all right? So these technicians cut this section of boat out and they're drying it out. They're actually gonna re-core that deck. So I just want to show you that, it doesn't have to be junk. There's ways to fix it, that you probably didn't realize. So now I'm going to jump into our HVS distributor. All right. So we got the boat, we got the top RPM figured out. But I want to talk about this because this is an up and coming problem that is becoming more and more prevalent. Okay. Now I will tell you, this is the world's worst distributor. Okay. These things are junk. Okay. Plastic housing. They are nothing but corrosion and moisture content. They're very confusing. This absolutely has nothing to do with ignition timing. I can rotate this thing anywhere. It has nothing to do with ignition timing. Okay. But if I'm doing a long block or I'm starting that motor up, okay, or I'm hoping and praying that the marina or the service technician, okay, is doing his job right, you as an engine builder need to ask this question. Okay. And the question is you got to check the cam retard pin. All right. Now everybody has this except Mercury Marine. Well, the problem is Mercury Marine is the most popular engine manufacturer we've got, right? So unfortunately, the big man on the street doesn't have any scan tool help for this. All right. And I can't tell you how many boats I've been to that this is screwed up, causing popping, causing engines don't run right. You pull cylinder heads off and get tulip valves and put them back on. This doesn't get in right. You got problems. Okay. Long blocks, the whole smash. All right. And the V6s, you can't turn it all. The V8s, you can turn a little bit. Okay, but Timing light is completely useless on this. I see guys get out there, they're trying to check, put timing in 10 degrees. I'm like, guys, it's done off the crank sensors, not done off this distributor. Okay. I put this sheet in here. I stole this out of a Crusader book. They do make a right-hand rotation engine with HVS. Okay. And obviously the whole goal when GM did this, in my opinion, was to keep all the keep all the banks on each side of the distributor. So left bank cylinders stay on the left side of the distributor, the right bank stays on the right side of the distributor. I think that was one of the goals with this cap. It turned out not to be a good system. Okay, I'm not going to go over every single bit of this, but I did put it in your handout. This is the GM procedure that's in the service manuals, Mercury, Volvo, Penta, Crusader, on how to install this distributor. Bring number 1 up on TDC. There's an extra dot drilled here. There's a white paint mark. They tell you how to line the oil pump shaft up. Okay, because the problem is you don't have a lot of rotation here. You've got to get this right. It's very easy to get this a tooth off. Very easy. Okay, so there's a number 8 that'll be marked there. If it's a V8, there's a 6 there. If it's a V6, okay. Again, I'm not going to read every ounce of this to you. Okay, it's in your handout. Download it, read it. It's good information. Okay. I mean, I was just at a boat not too long ago. Had a brand new or a reman long block, right, put in it, and it was missing when they got done with it, right, on the top end. And the problem was they did not have that HVS index correctly. I mean, they screwed around for 2 months, right? They did Swaptronics between the 2 engines. It was a 31 C-Ray with 2 V6 Mercs, and they didn't have this in right. That's all the problem was. Okay. Now, if you're into this stuff like me, I suggest you buy this tool. This is not a paid infomercial. I'm not getting paid from these people. I don't know them that well. Talked to them on the phone a couple of times, but this is a tool I own. I actually own the laptop version. If you buy the deluxe kit, which I would not buy, half these adapters, engines you'll never see, 7.3 diesels, Power Strokes. They got some outboard adapters and that. But if you buy the $699 kit, I mean, to me, if you're doing a bunch of marine work, you should have this tool. And you're making them run, you should own this tool, okay? If you want the little cheaper version, this TechMate is a good alternative, right? $500, got a little winky blinky thing. I can scroll up and down. I can set timing with it. If I got an older engine with a Delco HEI ignition, okay, I got to put this thing in base mode, right? I got to lock the timing out and I got to set it to base, right, which is usually 8 or 10 degrees usually, and lock it down. We don't want to power time this stuff. And for the ECM to control timing correctly, I have to have base set correctly. That is super, super, super important, okay? But on my 2003 and up small blocks with HVS, I can use this to set cam retard, except Mercury Marine, okay? And when I go to the data screen, all right, this is an engine that we rebuilt, right? And I fired it up for the first time on the floor. It sounded good, ran okay. But look, my spec on this engine is 43 to 47 degrees, and look where I'm at. I'm at 18. That's no bueno. We ain't shipping this, right? So we just adjust this real time, and that number updates real time, and you lock the distributor down, right, the HVS unit, and I always elevate the RPM and make sure that it's 43 to 47 before it leaves, okay? This is a question you should ask your installer, especially if there's problems. Did you check the cam retard? And I got a challenge for you, all right? I bet you go to most marinas and most service technicians, you ask them this, they don't know it. They don't know it. They didn't know you can check this. They didn't know there's an adjustment for it, okay? Not all of them, but a lot of them, okay? And this is why I'm bringing this to light. This is super, super important, okay? Basically what cam retard is a software inferred position of the cam sensor in relation to the crank sensor. It's got nothing to do with anything on the balancer. It's got everything to do with the cam sensor position. But what we're adjusting is the rotor air gap, okay? So what happens is the rotor air gap increases and that drives KV up, all right? And here's my point. Okay, this is a 350 mag Merc. I think it was like a middle 2000s, okay? And I know this is not a scope class and you're probably wondering what the hell this is, but the point I want to drive home is each line here is 5,000 volts on my oscilloscopes. There's 5, 10, 15, 20, right? 25. Look at this one right here, 30,000 volts, all right, at 2,700 RPM. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. KV demand should drop in neutral when I rev the engine up. It should not increase. When it increases, I automatically know if it's got an HVS system, the HVS is out of sync. This thing is nowhere near where it's supposed to be, okay? And what that does, that shortens up my burn time. And that's what creates my misfires, my popping. I've been on boats that sound completely fine, and you'll hear like a pop, like at 38, 3,900 RPM. They'll just be sitting there going, and I'll go pop, 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 you know, just randomly, you know. And this HVS, right? Cylinder heads were done, intake was swapped, whatever, long block was put in. And these guys are going nuts. I mean, they're putting fuel filters in, they're running separate tanks of fuel, they're tuning them up, and this thing's out of time. Okay, it's out of sync, I should say, not out of thing. But this is what happens when it's right. See how this KV demands a lot less? You know, got longer burn time here. I know everybody doesn't have a scope. I understand that. Okay, but I just want to show you what it does to the ignition system, because those coils, the max that they put out is around 30 kV. So my point is when I jump back, if it took everything that coil had to bridge a gap, in this case, the rotor air gap is way, way too high, because remember, the spark is done off the crank sensor, right, on that leading edge tooth. As soon as that crank sensor sees that leading edge tooth, it strikes the coil, it sends that out. If that rotor air gap is 2 miles away, I've got to bridge that gap, okay? And all of a sudden, it took every ounce of energy of that coil to bridge the gap. I don't leave anything here left to burn. Misfire, see? That's how it works. And you old school mechanics out there, you ever notice when you had fouled spark plugs or something like that, and you take the insulated pliers and you plug, you unplug the spark plug, and you watch the spark zap the plug, the mist went away? It's because you drove the KV demand up, right? That KV demand can kind of sometimes get through that fouled spark plug. I know it's an old school tip, but same thing here, right? Elevate the KV, but nothing left to burn. So we adjusted for the lowest KV. Mercury's got some internal bulletins on this, and it's even in the service manual, right? And they basically say, hey, Chris, if this HVS is misindexed by only a small amount, it may cause a misfire, but only at a certain point of spark advance. Okay, and they're right. they're 1,000% correct, I can assure you. Okay, and it basically says, I want to hit this home, right? Timing is not adjustable on any ECM engine, right? Rotating the distributor from its properly indexed position is going to cause the spark to jump to the wrong tower, or it's going to take everything it's got to get it to go. All right, very, very, very important. Okay, now Mercury releases TSB in 2011. I'll be honest with you, I've never used this. I know technicians that do. I use the scope, but the reason I'm bringing this up, and I'm spending a little bit of time on this, is because let's say you're building an engine, right? I'm building an engine, and a lot of times we get long blocks. The distributor comes with us, right? A lot of people like to send engines to the machine shop with everything together. And if I'm putting that distributor in, I don't want to be the guy to be blamed said it's not indexed right. Well, I know there's not a lot of Radio Shacks around, but if I go order a couple things, I can order this cam sensor plug, okay, and I can order this 470 ohm quarter watt resistor and an LED and a holder and all this stuff. I can fab up a little winky blinky light here. And if I follow basically what I can do is this thing is self-powered. Once I bring the engine up to where it's supposed to be, I can adjust this distributor so this light comes on and that can lock it down. So if you're doing a lot of these engines and you don't have a scan tool or don't have a plan to buy one or whatever, this is a good alternative. You can use this on anybody. You can use it on Crusader, Volvo Penta, anything with an HVS. You can do this on a car. You're building a car motor, you could do the same thing if you wanted to. Okay, because the phasing is got to be correct. I'm not reading you all these things, okay? They've got these decals you can buy or you can mark it. They've got a little ruler in here that you mark the balancer, because it's not, you don't do it right at TDC number 1. Again, I'm not reading it to you. I'm just putting all this in here. It's right out of Mercury Marine TSB, and it applies to many, many engines. And I see this screwed up almost once a month. I mean, it's just non-stop headaches. I mean, this thing is a real pain in the butt, okay? And I don't want you guys, an engine builder or a consumer, I know we might have some consumers paying attention too. I don't want a consumer looking at this going, you know, or how do I know this is right? And again, you don't want to have a misfiring engine or an issue, find out that the HVS wasn't indexed correctly, right? It kind of makes us look bad. So again, I'm just putting this engine in here, information in here for your benefit, so you know. Now, of course, the engines we can check cam retard on, like the Crusaders, where do you get the spec, right? So I'm putting the specs in here for you, most of them, right? If I got a MIFI 4, it's 43 to 47, and that's what a MIFI 4 computer looks like if I have a Crusader, all right? I fire up the engine, and again, it tells you right here how to do it, okay? If it's an EGC computer, excuse me, if it's an ECM07 computer, which is made by E-Controls, the spec is 0 to 4. And this is why this is confusing. This distributor is still lined up the same, but the way the software infers this is differently. Because would you agree that 43 to 47 is a lot different than 0 to 4? I mean, I would, you know, it's got nothing to do with ignition time. It's got everything to do with how the computer sees the phase relationship of the cam sensor versus the crank sensor. But I want you to be aware of this. This is not, you know, if you're a Chevy truck mechanic, old GM drivability tech, these things were always 0, right? 0 plus or minus 2. The V6s were usually like -5 or -7, something like that, you know, but in the marine world, they're all over the board, all right? And this is Volvo Penta, okay? Look at this, 06 and up is 12 to 15. Same engine, right? Same controller as this, right? This is the same manufacturer. This is E-Controls out of San Antonio, Texas. They do a lot of gaseous work, you know, propane vehicles and so forth like that. They do a lot of stuff for forklifts and industrial engines. I don't know anybody there. You know, I just know who makes this computer. That's what that E is. But you can see this computer looks eerily similar to this, okay? But I got a different spec. I got a completely different spec, okay? So I just want you to be aware of that. Again, if you've got questions on this, get a hold of me. I'll try to help you with it. And I stole this out of one of our diagnostic classes, but on an EGC engines, I need both cam and crank to start the engine, okay? And I put some notes in here, right? -4 to -7 on a V6. You know, 8 ones read 0 since they don't have a distributor. We got that, you know. So again, and look at this. This is a MIFI 5, or excuse me, MIFI 6. This is an Inmar engine, very popular in ski boats. Look at this, 705 degrees is their spec, you know. They're not 0, they're not all 12 to 15. They're not, you see where the confusion sets in here? This is a pain, this is pain, okay? You gotta know this, right? If you don't know, call the dealer, call the marina, call me. I'm gonna try to get this for you. I just want you to be aware of this, okay? I know this is not completely a diagnostic class here, but as engine builders, we're kind of tasked with this sometimes. Sometimes we have to be a diagnostician when the marina can't figure it out, okay? But jump into some transmission stuff now. All right, this happens to be a velvet drive. Okay, obviously Paragon's similar on the cast iron stuff. And the reason I'm going to go over this is because I see a lot of mistakes here too, and it affects the engine. So you'll see on this pump, there's a top that's an arrow this way, and down here, it's kind of hard to see. There's a top with an arrow that way. I want to make a really clear statement here. These, I can 180 degrees this, right? I got 4 bolts here. I can flip this thing 180. All that's doing is allowing it to pick up fuel, or excuse me, fluid. Okay, so this is a rotor pump, right? It's got a gland in it. It's the only thing it's doing. It does not switch prop rotation. I repeat, this does not switch prop rotation. This is only to pick up fluid. This is a 50-50 shot, okay? The flywheel better be going this direction, right, as it's bolted on the engine. If I mix this up, I got 3 neutrals, okay? It's not gonna have any fluid pressure. It's not gonna shift, 3 neutrals, right? If the transmission is shifting, all right, I got forward and I got reverse, or I'm going one way or the other, the pump is indexed correctly for the engine that it's mounted to, all right? So this is a little bit more basically what I just told you, okay? I want to put this in here because, again, this is always something that is screwed up. I deal with this 3-4 times a year, minimum, okay? And I want to talk about another ratio, okay? You see there's a 188 and there's a 191. These are reversing ratios. That means I can have a right-hand rotation engine, okay? And that means that forward gear is going to output left hand, all right? So that means I have to have a left-hand prop on a right-hand engine. Kind of confusing, okay? But you got to know this as an engine builder, all right? I got to know what's going on, right? Sometimes these guys think that you can, you know, switch some stuff with some transmissions. This transmission here puts a monkey wrench in it. So for instance, you know, generally speaking, on a flywheel aft engine, right, where the flywheel is mounted directly to the transmission, which is conventional, the opposite rotation right-hand engine is going to be on the starboard side. All right. And then automotive rotation engine is going to be on the port side, left hand. But if I have a 188 or a 191 transmission, it's reversed. The opposite rotation is now on the port side. Okay. So, the water always goes away from the boat. We talked about this back in April. If you watched and again, it's in your book. You can go back and go through this book. I explain all this, but I wanted to touch on this transmission. This is very, very important. Okay. It is confusing, but I just want you to be aware of this. There are transmissions that reverse ratio. All right. These are V drives. Okay. This is a cast iron V drive. Same thing. Okay. The same rules apply as that pump. This is an aluminum V drive. You see how the output shaft is hollow? The shaft actually comes right through. This is a Velvet Drive 5000, which is, the newer version of this. Okay. This is all cast iron heavy. This is all aluminum. All right. This style transmission must have a left-hand or automotive rotation engine. Okay. It must. These are vane pumps in here. This pump is not reversible. So if I put this on an opposite rotation engine, I got 3 neutrals. But if I put it on a left-hand engine, I can output either direction, right? This transmission here, I can't do that. And if I go back to this, this transmission here, forward gear on anything, excuse me, I want to make a statement. Any ratio but 188 and 191, forward gear is going to be crankshaft rotation. So in other words, if I've got a left-hand crankshaft rotation, then forward gear is going to spin a left-hand prop. Okay, period. No exceptions. Okay. These are the aluminum transmissions. Okay, I just put this in there. Dipstick, shift lever. Velvet. They look similar. They do interchange somewhat. The mounts are different. Okay, this is a Herb 63 series. All right. Only problem, I know you're not boat builders, but they're reversed. So for left-hand prop, the selector goes forward on a 5000. It goes aft on a Hearth. So I know more confusion, not really needed for, engine builders, but it's really to let you know that, look, both of these transmissions must have a left-hand engine, automotive rotation, but they'll output either direction, no problem. The cast iron transmissions cannot do that. Cast iron transmissions cannot do that. The aluminum ones can. Okay. So same thing here. On the case, there's an F. When this lever is going towards the flywheel, I must be going in forward gear. If it's not, I'll burn the transmission up on the sea trawl. So if that thing's going towards the flywheel and the boat's propelling forward, it's right. Okay. Very important. Very, very important. Okay. And here's a product installation manual talking about prop again with the transmissions. They're basically saying, hey, 1 inch of change in the prop is 100 to 200 RPM. That is true. I just put that in there for you. And there's some more prop shaft couplings information in here in case anybody wants it. All right. In the ski boat world, I know there's a lot of ski boat stuff. Okay. There happens to be this PCM pleasure craft model 40 or model 80 transmission. The interesting thing with this is these always had left-hand or automotive rotation engines, but they always output a right-hand prop. Okay. And they've got an 8-degree down angle right in there. I've only seen these in ski and wakeboard boats. Okay. That's the only thing I've seen them in. They might be another stuff, but I just want you to be aware that, just because it's not a Velvet Drive or a ZF Hearth, PCM did make their own transmissions in some of these ski boats that run the opposite way. I cannot put this on a right-hand engine. If I put this on an opposite rotation engine, I've got 3 neutrals. Okay. Just want you to be aware of that. Here's the front picture of that V drive setup again, right? See how that shaft goes right through there, right? And this old school setup, the shafts right here, these are hard to align. Try to get down here and get this within 4 thousandths, which is what the marina or installer should do. It's not real fun. This one here, it's actually on the other side. You can see this pump here, the pump's on the other side. You see there's no bolts here to change anything. And you notice on this cast iron one, these bolts are here so you can re-index it, Same thing here. I put this in there about engine alignment. I'm not reading it to you, but it just shows you what you need to be doing when you align an inboard shaft. You got a vibration in a boat, something like that, this needs to be checked. Okay. One other tricky thing on these V drives on the cast iron is you can have a chain drive or you can have a gear drive. All right, and you can't tell by looking at the case. So my long-winded point is a gear drive is going to spin the same prop as the crankshaft rotation. A chain drive is going to spin it opposite. You can see here this is going left hand, and see how the boat's turning right hand, or prop turn right. So I just want you to be aware of that. Again, is this popular? No, it's not. Is it out there? Yes, it is. Okay, and parts of these are getting really hard to come by. And again, I know this isn't a boat building class, but I just want you to be aware of transmissions that can kind of screw with our engine rotation. Okay, and again, if you've got stuff that you aren't sure, reach out to me. I can help you with this stuff. All right. One nice thing we like to do when we do an engine is we like to make it look pretty if we can. Okay. And again, this is not a commercial. He has no idea I'm even doing this, but A2D Designs. This gentleman is an excellent guy. He has decals, right? And look at these things. They're beautiful. They're on the original metal. You know, to me, to do a really nice job, if you can recreate those decals instead of paint, because a lot of times, you know, we put tape over this stuff. This stuff's 30 years old. You peel the tape off, you peel half the ink off with it. Okay, so this is kind of cool. You know, just a place that you can get that. Again, it's in your handout. You know, send him an email, give him a call. It's a side business for this gentleman. Again, not a commercial. I'm not getting paid by him, but he's got all the decals for the flame arresters, all kinds of stuff. He can engrave tags. If you're really doing a 100-point restoration on some old cool boat, he can do distributor tags. He can do, you know, generator tags, all that stuff. He can punch the numbers, everything. The guy is a whiz at this. So don't be afraid to reach out. If you want to take your job to the next level, make it look really, really, really good, reach out to these guys. He can do a nice job for you. And obviously paint, I'm not a chemist or anything, but I will tell you that this Moeller brand, again, not a commercial, is very, very good. And they have all the right colors. You know, you can see we got Chris Craft blue, we got OMC Cobra, Chrysler blue, gray primer, Crusader, you know, Neptune gloss is Mercury. And I just picked some, and we stock this stuff here. We use it. But again, sometimes we're painting stuff. You know, I'm not picking on Krylon, Duplicolor, or any of that VST. A lot of times they don't have the correct marine paint. And you can buy this stuff from your local marine supply house. I'm sure you can get it online, West Marine, whatever. You know, I just want to show you that this stuff is out there to do the correct paint on some of these engines. So, and with that, we have come to the end of my presentation. We got through it. I appreciate you for listening. There's some contact information for us. There's our Facebook page, our YouTube channel. And obviously the AERA, great folks that allowed me to do this for you. And I would say if there's any questions, I would be glad to take them.
Super, thanks, Chris. Excellent presentation. I mean, to open up your shop and basically show all the stuff that you do in house there, and supply us with all the information from your suppliers and everything. Really, really great. I appreciate your time and everything you put into it. We do have some questions for sure.
Okay.
So the one is, how do you handle sea trials that take longer than what you've already built?
That's a very good question. One of the things we do is I try not to do engines out of town. We get a lot of requests for it. And number one, I'm the only guy in the machine shop. So now that I'm sitting here talking to you, there's nothing getting on the machine shop. So that's one deterrent. It depends. Most of the stuff is in our local area, and sometimes it does take more than 2 hours. You can negotiate that in. You know, you can say, hey, listen, you know, I bill a minimum of 2. A lot of times it takes more than 2 hours. That is absolutely the truth. But one thing I've learned in this business, you've got to get paid for your time. And I would definitely talk to your marina or your whoever the installer is, and you bill them 4 hours, whatever your hourly rate is. Because anytime you walk out of the shop, it costs us money, right? The minute I walk out of here, we're losing. I'm not going to say we're losing money, but it's costing money, right? I feel like I'm more valuable in the building than I am anywhere else. You know, so there's a fee for that. You know, we have to be profitable. But yes, work that in. You know, if you know you got to drive in another state or whatever, You know, I think you need to work that in, or you need to make an agreement with the customer. Say, look, I'm only going to give you a 6-month warranty on this thing if you want. You know, a lot of it is your customer too. You know, many customers are very, very good. Okay, and most of it boils down to communication. If you have good communication skills, you can do anything as far as I'm concerned. You know, you just communicate that with them. But good question.
Okay, another question in regards to sea trial. How are you handling a lot of these marinas and stuff that you probably do work for these marinas, and you have the owner on the boat with you? When you go out and you see something that maybe the marina's done wrong on the install, how are you handling that to make it so that the owner, like, how are you handling delicate relationship kind of thing? How are you doing that?
All right, another excellent question. I will tell you that if it's something simple, I just go ahead and correct it. If it's a loose hose, we got a small water leak, something like that. If something's radically wrong, we go back and we address it with the service manager. You know, if we can complete the sea trial, that's good. If we can't complete the sea trial, we turn around right away. Or if it's something we notice before we even leave the dock, I go and get them. Absolutely. And most time I go with the customer and say, hey, listen, you know, this alternator's not charging. I can't tell you how many power steering pumps don't have fluid in them. Drive lube monitors don't have oil in them. Alarms are going off. I mean, you name it. I think I've almost seen it. And most of the time the service manager doesn't know, right? I mean, not to cover for him, but you know, when we send somebody out to do a job, you know, I mean, it's almost impossible for them to climb up the ladder and check everything they're doing, you know. So and I get it, and everybody's busy, you know. But yes, absolutely. Depending on the situation, if it's small, we'll go ahead and just take care of it. And then a lot of times I'll go talk to the marine and say, hey, just so you know, that one hose clamp wasn't tight, or hey, the alternator wire wasn't on. You know, I was just recently involved in a Ford. I had a Ford 5.8 FSI, right? We did some cylinder heads, and unfortunately, they took a DA wheel to the frickin' deck, all right, and they nicked a couple of wires, okay, and they started up and it blew the injector driver out of the computer. So we go down there they asked for some help. You know, this thing's only running on 4 cylinders. You know, I mean, so stuff like this happens all the time. You know, so but yeah, good question. But yeah, I do address it
Okay,
absolutely.
all right. Um, since all marine engines run at a higher RPM than automotive engines, should they be balanced?
Yes, yes, always a good idea to balance. Absolutely, we balance most of our stuff, not all. It just depends on what the customer wants. But yes, that's an excellent question. For sure. You know, I can tell you this is old and probably nobody's going to see it anymore, but OMC stringer drives, which is pre 1987. So basically 1960, whatever to 86. They had an issue where their bell housing assembly bolted up and there was a bearing that would fail and it would tear the thrust out of the crankshaft. So obviously you're changing crankshafts in that regard. You want to balance. And now we have the ability to buy aftermarket crankshafts so easily. You know, years ago we didn't have all these aftermarket cranks and stuff that we can get. But oh yeah, balancing for sure. You know, and you notice the newer the engine, the higher the RPM level, right? The LS stuff is always in the 5,000 range. These Merc 82s, which we talked about a while back, they're 51, 5,200, propping. So the RPM's up there. They want you to cruise these things approximately 75% of wide open throttle if the boat is propped correctly. But yeah, I like that. It's a good question.
Okay. So one more question, Chris, and then if we do get any more that come in, like I say, we can, just to respect everybody's time, we can get the questions over to Chris and get those answered. But Chris, the question is if the engine came with a steel crank, can we replace it with a cast crank?
All right, that's a good question. I will tell you that I don't know what engine we're talking about here, but let me name some stuff off the top of my head. All right, we'll start with Chrysler. All right, the 273 318s all the way through the early 70s. Same thing with the 440s, 383s had steel cranks. Okay, they put cast cranks in the middle 70s in all these engines. Okay, yes, I have swapped them both ways. I will tell you when we get in the modern stuff, 454s. Okay, I believe I covered this in one of our other parts, but the 385 horse 454 has a crankshaft, or excuse me, has a steel crankshaft. All right, that should stay steel because of that higher RPM. The 8.1 HO engine, all right, that is a steel forged crankshaft. It should stay that. I mean, would if I had a 385 horse 454, would I put it out the door with a cast crank? I would not. Same thing with the 8.1. These bigger engines running high RPM, really, and most of these boats are underpowered. I would want the forge crank in there, and that's why engineering, when they designed that engine, in my opinion, did that. Now, if I'm working on an old 318 or something like that, and it's in a Marinette or a Trojan or something like that, I don't think it's that big a deal because that engine is still kind of at the same RPM. Those are 4,400 RPM engines max, okay? But that 8.1's pushing $5,000, if not over. Or that 7.4 HO 385 horse. That thing's propped at 550, 200-ish, So I would want the forge crank in there personally.
Okay, excellent. Well, like I mentioned to everyone before, Chris has provided us with the handouts, and they're in the handouts section on your control panel. So all three of these series, like all three of the webinars that Chris has done, is in the handouts section. You can also let us know if you want us to send you the handouts. We'll do that for you as well. And Chris, we can't thank you enough. I know you got just a ton of time into putting all these together, and you've provided us with information that it's top secret stuff here that you've done. So much appreciated, and again, thank you for your time and all of your efforts for sure.
Well, hey, you're welcome. Thanks. This was your idea, Rob. I enjoyed every minute of it. I had a great time, So I love sharing information. I hope everybody got at least one thing out of this. That's the key. Any training you go to, I go to lots of training myself. If I get one thing out of it, it's worth it. So thanks for listening, and thanks for tuning in.
For sure. So what we'll do now, we're going to go back to Amanda, and all of Chris's webinars are on our YouTube channel along with our other webinars. And so Amanda will show you how to watch those.
All right. Real quick, as Rob mentioned, all of our webinars are out on our YouTube channel. You can find Chris's webinars under our technical section as of right now. New this year, we also added the Engine Professional podcast. Our podcast has been going for a while, but now we have a video to go along with it. So check that out. We just released episode, I believe it's 27 out there. And Engine Professional Insights is our other new playlist, and there should be a new video going up there shortly. In addition to the technical webinars, you can also find business-related webinars, Spanish webinars for our Spanish-speaking viewers, and also our process webinars. Rob and I do those from time to time, and they're a great spot to find useful tips and tricks on using our Process Pro program. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone again for attending. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. When you go to leave today, there will be a survey that pops up. Take a moment, fill that out, let us know how we're doing. There is a spot in there to ask Chris any additional questions you may have for him. And there's also a spot in there to ask any questions you may have for us here at AERA. If you need to get a hold of anyone on the AERA team, you can call us at 815-526-7600, or feel free to just shoot an email to Rob or myself. You'll see both of our emails are listed there, and we're happy to help you. And if we can't, we will pass your email along to somebody who can. So as always, thanks you guys. We appreciate your time, and we hope you have a great afternoon.